Good Morning Show with Troy Torres is brought to you by 76 Circle K Guam.
Good morning. My name is Troy Torres. It is 9:53 a.m. on Thursday, August 8, 2024. Public school students here in Guam were supposed to start their first day of school today. That is not happening because, as should be no surprise to anybody, the government of Guam screwed up. And so here we are. We'll try to get more information about that today. Regarding Guam news, we'll also try to get information about an odd situation that stems from a magistrate's report yesterday about a guy accused of enslaving a woman known to him over the 3-day period, beating her severely, taking out her tooth with pliers, and raping her with a toilet plunger. All these allegations made against a guy named Eugene Huffman. The reason it is a strange magistrate's report, on top of the fact that it's a disturbing accusation against Mr. Huffman, is that there is a segment in the magistrates that says that the police apprehended him after going to his house 2 months after the incident that happened back in June. And this was yesterday or 2 days ago, went to his house to talk to him about an expired person complaint. And then we're seeing some comments on this story about Mr. Huffman, about a woman who died, and some accusations made against him by commenters. So we've asked Guam Police Department for more information about the victim in this case, about who this expired person is, and we'll try to get that story out today, or as soon as we're able to verify information, we'll try to get that to you. But this morning, I was treated to a clip from... I can't remember what the source is, but the original source is a news station out of Reno, Nevada, that recently asked J.D. Vance, Donald Trump's running mate, whether he agrees with Donald Trump's plan to end birthright citizenship. And here's what Mr. Vance said.
Trump wants to take away some birthright citizenship. Do you agree with him on that?
Yeah, I really do. I mean, one of the reasons why we have such a border crisis is you have somebody who comes in, maybe they're not a bad person, of course, but you can't have somebody who breaks the laws to come into the country and then they give birth, and now their child has permanent rights to American citizenship. I don't think that's what the founders of the country envisioned.
Trump wants to take away some...
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I just went when that whole spiel without any volume. All right, sorry. Here we go. So, birthright citizenship. I'll try to repeat everything I just said. Birthright citizenship comes from a legal principle called jus soli. It's in Latin, it means something like jurisdiction of the soil. And it is the legal principle the United States followed since even before the Constitution, back in 1787, that said, if you were born on U.S. soil, then you are a U.S. citizen. Makes sense, right? Except that in 1857, the Supreme Court ruled in Dred Scott versus Sanford, which is a significant milestone in the nightmare or in the horror of those bad days in American history, days that we should not be proud of, but we should be proud of how we have taken steps to help to resolve this dark history of ours. Dred Scott versus Sanford, the Supreme Court said that descendants or children of African slaves who were in the United States and born in the United States could not be U.S. citizens according to the Constitution. And so in the aftermath of the Civil War, which, was brought about by the whole slavery argument and the rights of who would be called African Americans, our Black brothers and sisters, their ancestors, came the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. And the 14th Amendment has a citizenship clause. So it enshrined this idea of jus soli. And it guaranteed that the descendants of people who were not U.S. citizens, but who immigrated to the United States, whether it was legally or undocumented, their descendants, the people who they gave birth to who were born in the United States would become U.S. citizens. And that has been the basis for citizenship as well as naturalization since the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment essentially got rid or set out to get rid of racism in our citizenship laws. Racism that was enshrined by the 1857 Supreme Court case Dred Scott versus Sanford. And so literally what J.D. Vance is agreeing with what Donald Trump wants to do is to take us back nearly 200 years to a time when essentially citizenship was governed by race. And they'll say that this is about making sure that the children of criminals, they call them criminals, basically undocumented immigrants are not criminals, by the way. But I mean, most of them are not criminals. Some of them actually committed heinous crimes in the countries that they were in. It's a very small, minute percentage, far less than 1% of the undocumented people coming into the United States have a criminal background. But according to data. And I wanted to play that clip of J.D. Vance because, anytime that you make these claims about what these candidates say, the MAGA right comes out and says fake news. But that's not fake news. That's not a deep fake. That's not an AI thing. That's an actual interview by a Reno, Nevada news station with J.D. Vance a few days ago, where he says, yeah, I want to end birthright citizenship. And if birthright citizenship was not in place in Guam and the CNMI over the past 50 years, do you understand how many of us would not be United States citizens? I would not be a United States citizen. My mother was not a U.S. citizen at the time that I was born here in Guam. This would probably apply more to people who have Filipino heritage, because many Filipinos came to Guam back during the reconstruction of the island, and then in the decades that followed, ever since we needed help with construction, or in any of the professional areas like nursing, medical providers, accountants, even managers. So many Filipinos immigrated to Guam and then mixed in with Chamorros or had children with other Filipinos who they met here in Guam. And tens of thousands of us here in Guam, I don't know how many thousands in the CNMI, would not be citizens if not for the 14th Amendment. And then there's the idea that, because the Republicans will say, and I'll get to the CNMI stuff after the commercial break. I really wanted to take a hit at this because it's important. Republicans will say that they want to end this birthright citizenship issue because, or in order to stem the number of undocumented people coming into the United States. It will not stem the number of undocumented people coming into the United States. You have to get to the root of that problem, which are the problems in those host countries or the countries from where these immigrants are coming. What it will do is it will guarantee that millions more Americans who are born in the United States to parents who have undocumented status will continue to be undocumented. They will not be able to get things like driver's licenses, assistance from the state where they clearly would need assistance, things like maternity care. And so you'll have a host of social issues. These individual states, wherever they immigrate to, they'll need more resources, but they won't get the more resources because they can't count the undocumented people in their state counts for federal funds, for federal programs. And then you run into a situation that goes back to the beginning of the country when, prior to 1787, the founding fathers were trying to figure out what to do in order to count the number of citizens in each of the states for the apportionment of representatives to the U.S. House of Representatives. And so what did they do? They came up with what's called the 3/5 compromise, because there were a number of slaves, a number of Africans who were living in the United States and were part of these plantations in the South. And in order for these southern states to get more money, as in take the fruits of taxation, enshrined in the principle of no representation or no taxation without representation. So these southern states that had all these slaves and all these plantations, they clamored and they said, you got to count our slaves as part of this because we need the funding. And the northern states were like, no, though they shouldn't be counted, which is kind of funny because 100 years later it ends up that the North fights against the South because the North opposed slavery. Now, for moral reasons, economic reasons, there are all those arguments about that. But they ended up with what's called the 3/5 compromise, which back then said that every African American, we call them now African Americans, but back then they were just called Africans or slaves, or they were called other pejoratives. Each African American constituted 3/5 of a person. Wouldn't even count them as an entire person. And all of that was about the apportionment of resources, the apportionment of representation that led to the apportionment of resources. That's what the Trump-Vance proposal wants us to go back to. That's essentially what it brings us back to. A time of absolute, abject racism. And all for what? To satiate the demands of Americans who are hurting in one way or another and looking for someone to blame. When we come back from this break, well, I want to talk to you more about, what's happening in the CNMI. Their candidate filing deadline was yesterday, and so now we have a full roster of the candidates there. Have you ever heard the term wolf in sheep's clothing? I want to explain more why I feel like that's what's going on in the elections over there, which I think are going to be exciting compared to what ours were here. Stick with us.
On Guam, not everyone is focused on upward mobility. Many struggle just to be mobile. Not everyone is opportunistic. Some just want an opportunity. Not everyone is looking for the huge payoff. Some are struggling just to make it to the next payday. For so many, the struggle is real. Those are the people I want to serve. They are the reason I am running.
I'm Sabrina Salas-Matanani, and I approve this message.
I want to thank everyone for coming out today. It was an overwhelming emotional day. I'm grateful to, of course, Governor Palacios, Lieutenant Governor Apateng, Congressman Kilidi Sablan, Mayor Arby, and of course the entire leadership of the House of Representatives that came out in support of our candidacy today. Together we are stronger. Everything that Kilidi has fought for has been about helping our people, lifting our people up, and especially those who struggle the most. I appreciate the work that he's done. I applaud it, and I hope to be able to follow in his footsteps. For the last 10 years, I have served as a public servant leader. I'm grateful for this opportunity. I also look forward to serving you in Washington, D.C. On behalf of my wife, Daisy, and our children, my committee, and my family, kindly ask for your vote of confidence this coming November as your representative and delegate for Washington, D.C. Undangkulo na si Jus Mosi, Giliso. Maraming salamat po. Thank you.
This message is approved and paid for by the committee to elect Edwin K. Probst, Edward Calvo, Treasurer.
Good Morning Show with Troy Torres is brought to you by 76 Circle K Guam.
Good morning, and thank you for sticking with us. My name is Troy Torres for the morning show. And we're sponsored by Circle K76. That's where I got this cocoa coffee mug. See that? Cool. With a laddie stone. You see that? Powering my morning with coffee. It is something that for the past 2 months, except for this past week, I have not been able to do because I suffered from a severe bout of insomnia that suddenly lifted this week. On Monday morning, I woke up early in the morning for the first time in 2 months. I was able to fall asleep without much incident the night before, and it's continued through this week. And so for everyone who's been praying for me and the insomnia that I was battling, thank you so much. Now I can drink coffee in the morning. I'm careful not to drink too much coffee or not to drink any coffee past a certain time. I don't want the insomnia to return, but here I am. I'll be getting back to my normal schedule. I'm doing 2 shows a day now. I don't know how long I'll be able to continue that. It all really depends on content, and that content depends on how much I'm paying attention to what's going on in both Guam and the CNMI. And that ability to pay attention has to do with me getting enough sleep or sleeping around a certain time and not waking up when the day is done. And so blessings and riches now to me, thanks to your prayers and thanks to the Lord that I've got back on this kick. And so one of the things that I have been paying attention to is the speeding up of the races over in the CNMI. Unlike in Guam, where we have a primary election and there are deadlines that happen months prior to the primary election, in the CNMI, the races just really began now. And it's because yesterday was the filing deadline for candidates to seek office. And it's all offices for the November 5 election. Again, they don't have a primary election. So everything is settled on the day of the general election. Or if there is an office that requires a 50% plus 1 vote threshold, and no candidate receives 50% plus 1, someone has a plurality but not a majority, then it goes into a runoff, which is what happened 2 years ago when Arnold Palacios, Ralph Torres, and Tina Sablan all ran for governor. The top 2 vote getters, none of which received a majority, were Ralph Torres and Arnold Palacios. There was a runoff election. I believe it was 14 days later. I think it was November 20th, if I'm not mistaken, where Tina Sablan, the day that she lost the general election, without receiving any promises from the Palacios campaign, without going into negotiations as are typical by politicians, in a very clean sort of sweep, she calls up Arnold Palacios and she says, "Ralph Torres cannot win this election. I'm supporting you. And I don't expect anything in return." And from that day began a coalition of independents and Democrats. Tina Sablan was representing the Democratic Party. Arnold Palacios had broken away from the Republican Party and run as an independent. And he won that election by a landslide, in large part due to Tina Sablan and Layla Staffler throwing all their support and campaigning actively for then Lieutenant Governor Arnold Palacios. That coalition has continued to today. They call it the INDEM coalition, INDEM, short for Independent Democrat. And they hold the governor's office, they hold the House of Representatives, and up until the defection of former Democrat, now independent, Edith de Leon Guerrero, the Senate president, the Senate essentially is under Republican control, de facto Republican control, back to, basically the Ralph Torres team. The Republican Party of the CNMI is nothing more than the Torres machine. And for the longest time, the Republicans had been the dominant party. So it's kind of like how the Democrats are have always been the dominant party in Guam. In the CNMI, the Republicans are the dominant party. And it's because of Ralph and the CNMI Republican Party recently, at least since 2016, has been dominated by Ralph Torres and his cronies. And there are several businesses, the richest people in the CNMI, they love the Republicans because they've benefited most from the Republicans and their knack for cronyism. And so that's kind of changed. Not the rich people loving the Republicans, the popularity of the Republican Party. It changed ever since people found out about all the corruption that Ralph Torres was up to. It changed when, during the pandemic, the CNMI government ran out of money during the Ralph Torres administration, after Ralph Torres was in charge of hundreds of millions of dollars in federal funds, and with impunity spent that money using his emergency powers of procurement. And that money just went to his cronies. Not just cronies in the CNMI, even cronies in Guam. This is all well documented. And the people of the CNMI are not stupid. They knew exactly what happened, and they were pissed at the Republicans. They are pissed at the Republicans. There is an economic recession happening in the CNMI that is worse than the recession here. If we even have a recession, it's arguable. You think about the middle and the poor classes here in Guam and how everyone really is struggling with inflation. It's worse in the CNMI. There are far fewer opportunities in the CNMI. In Guam, there are so many job openings in so many places and not enough workers. In the CNMI, there are just not those job openings. There are no real opportunities. Their wages are far lower than ours. Their prices are going up. Granted, their groceries are a little cheaper than ours, but their power bills are more expensive than ours. If you can imagine that the already high power bills that we pay, well, theirs are worse, and their power system is worse. Their power system is on the brink, in all three islands, on the brink of collapse. And so they have kind of like a military buildup, similar to Guam, but not at the scale Guam has. The majority of that buildup is happening in Tinian. There is opportunity for a buildup to spill over into Saipan and create more economic opportunity there. I haven't heard much from the Palacios administration in the way of the advocacy for that to happen, but I know that that's on the table, and that there's this multi-billion-dollar Pacific Deterrence Initiative that conceivably, if Jim Moylan and his cronies in the Southeast United States, those representatives in the U.S. House, don't get their way, perhaps more money will be available for things like seaport progress, both in Guam and in Saipan and Rota. More military infrastructure, more military buildup, more federal infrastructure buildup, and also build up outside these fences. And so that really is kind of like A federal infusion of cash, whether through grants or through contracts, et cetera, is really the answer to the short-term struggle in the CNMI. Tourism also, of course, is an answer. The only problem is that our source market outbound tourists, travelers, or potential travelers just don't have the kind of money like they used to. And their governments, Korea, China, Japan, are advocating more domestic travel within those countries. And so even here in Guam, we're having problems getting more Korean tourists. There's been a surprising increase in Japanese tourists. In the CNMI, the situation is more dire. They need more destination enhancement. Their Marianas Visitors Authority is absolute crap. More concerned with paychecks and contract cronies than to destination enhancement and to actually getting Korean and Japanese tourists over there. I'm mentioning all of this because the CNMI didn't get into this situation overnight. They got into this situation through the recklessness of the tourist regime, which was helped out by hundreds of people in the tourist administration and corporately associated with the tourist administration from 2016 all the way to 2022, all the way to January of 2023, in fact. And that was when the voters of the CNMI kicked out Ralph Torres and inaugurated Arnold Palacios to be the governor. Ever since Arnold Palacios has been the governor, you've seen Republicans kind of lifting their heads here and there, the bobbling up, like that game where at the carnival where there's these holes and in these different holes you have these like stuffed animals that pop up their heads and you have to like bat them real fast before they go back down. It's kind of like that. Every now and then Republican would put up their head into the public spotlight and say something critical about the Palacios administration that really has no basis in fact when you research it, when you look into things. The biggest thing that they've been up to is advocating for more Chinese tourists, even though they know that there are no Chinese tourists. Not that there are no Chinese tourists, but not enough for China Airlines or whatever airlines to inaugurate new flights, direct service between mainland China and Saipan like there used to, because there used to be a demand for Chinese tourists. So they're blaming that on the Palacios administration. They're blaming things like the Hyatt going under on the INDEMs, that coalition of independents and Democrats. And essentially they're saying that the economic troubles of the CNMI were caused in the last 1.5 years that these people have been in office, and forgetting and just completely disregarding the fact that the economic and financial problems started during and were just laid out by the Torres administration, the Republican administration. And so you have to hand it to candidates like Kim Hines, who, despite Republican being that boogeyman term in the CNMI, at the very least had the courage to run as a Republican, not hiding her stripes. And then you look at another candidate, Liana Hofschneider, running as an independent, and you wonder, what? Why is she running as an independent? She has been one of the most Republican, MAGA right, Ralph Torres loving people, and saying the most incendiary things on Facebook and some of the most just disgusting pejoratives against racial groups, racial minorities in the CNMI. Bo Kittig was another one, running for the House of Representatives, running as an independent, even though his allegiance has been Republican. And I want to go through this list because it's an interesting list, because what you have are a bunch of independents and Democrats on the INDEMs. They actually are part of the coalition representing reform. And don't get me wrong, I have my criticisms of the Palacios administration. I think, and it's a story that I plan to do, that there has been far too much travel that has happened in the Palacios administration and in the legislature. Far too much travel. And I don't care if the travel is paid for by federal funds. Far too much travel. And I don't know how that can be justified during the financial crisis and when people are economically depressed in their families, in their neighborhoods. I think that some of the Palacios appointees to cabinet positions are lackluster and don't fit into the narrative and the promises that were made by the Palacios administration to select the best and brightest. And I understand some of that has to do with the amount of pay. And the best and brightest are not going to take a $45,000 or $55,000 job if they can be paid $75,000, $95,000 in the private sector. Okay, fine. And you know, could the Palacios administration have been more aggressive on some of their agenda items? The answer is yes. Could the Palacios administration advocate or implement further downsizing to adjust to the realities of the finances of the CNMI Treasury? Yeah, harder decisions could be made. But the Palacios administration and the in-dem coalition are far and away better for the people of the CNMI and the Marianas than the Republicans ever were, especially the Ralph Torres Republicans, who squandered hundreds of millions of dollars, engaged in the... You can't even exaggerate their corruption. The level of corruption and their impunity in their corrupt acts. One of the issues where you saw the true blue independents and Democrats who are part of the coalition versus the fake independents and the fake Democrats was when Marissa Flores introduced a bill that would have greatly aided Jim Kingman in the prosecution of corrupt people in the CNMI. It had to do with the courts. And even Jim Kingman and the Attorney General came out in support of the bill. And you saw the Senate president, who won as a Democrat, Edith de Leon Guerrero, 4 years ago. She won election for the first time in the CNMI after running before as a Republican. She won as a Democrat, and the Democratic Party endorsed her. And part of that, actually all of that, was because she had said that she was completely opposed to the Torres administration and the corruption that it stood for. But then when it came time for Edith de Leon Guerrero to put her money where her mouth is, she decided that narrative wasn't going to work for her anymore. She opposed the Flores bill as well as other legislation by Democrats and independents, as well as the reforms proffered by the Palacios administration, and went completely rogue. Then she sided with the Republicans in the Senate and essentially gave the majority in the Senate over to the Republicans. But instead of running as a Republican, Edith de Leon Guerrero is running for re-election to her Senate seat as an independent. She didn't even have the courage to run as a Republican. Nothing. She's running as an independent, and like many other people on this list running as independents, they are counting on you to not know the difference between them being true red Republicans and them acting as though they are true blue independents and part of this coalition that is popular. And it's not just her sister, Carmen Patricia de Leon Guerrero, running for Precinct 1 for the House, running as an independent. Really? After supporting everything that has been spewed by the Republicans over the past year and a half in their effort to malign the in-dem coalition and the reform-minded governor, you're going to run as an independent? The same color as the governor who you oppose? You're going to run as that and not as a Republican as you truly should run? At least Joseph Flores is running as a true red Republican, and he's not afraid to run under that. And then you have Janet Maratita, former representative from the House, running for Precinct 1 as an independent. What a joke. She has been a true red Republican year after year, completely endorsed and was with the Torres Sablan effort to corrupt the government even further. And now she's running as an independent. That just amazes me. A member of the Torres administration, a rather louder member of the Torres administration, and so many members and holdovers from the Torres administration running for CNMI office, mainly in the House of Representatives, when they should be running as Republicans, they're running as independents. Yvette Sablan running for Precinct 1 as an independent. Get out of here. She is a true red Republican, a Ralph Torres Republican. And she's running under the same banner as the man who the Republicans detest and want to take down. Again, what they are counting on is you not realizing the difference, is you not seeing their true blue colors. Del Benson running for Precinct 3 as an independent. Get out of here. That's a true red Republican. It's Danny Aquino. He runs the military buildup office. He's a holdover from the Torres administration. In fact, Governor Palacios had to strip him of a number of duties because he was not playing ball with the administration. See, this is where I butt heads with the governor. I think the governor has been way too nice. I think the governor should have fired so many holdovers from the Torres administration. Because why not? That's the administration that screwed the CNMI through and through with impunity, without stopping for 1 second to think that if they take money and put it into their pockets or the pockets of their families or their cronies or whoever they are, who they're taking that money from. The regular people, the everyday Commonwealth citizen who is struggling to put food on the table, struggling to pay the power bill, the water bill, can't get wage increases because of the economic situation of the CNMI, because whatever money was meant to help those poor people, those middle-class people, went into the pockets of the very people who are now asking you to forget what they did, the colors, the stripes that they have on them, to just blind yourselves to the truth that's in front of you about who these people are, what they represent, what they did to you, and what they're going to do to you if they get back into office. And that's why these people are running as independents and not as Republicans. That's why you see less than a handful of people in a slate of 59 candidates for all offices. Less than a handful of them are running as Republicans. Why? Because they need to run as independents in order to even qualify for your vote. And what they hope is to get enough of them into office in the House and even in the Senate so that they can disrupt any progress Governor Palacios intends to make and the In-Dem coalition wanted to make or wants to make, so that they can blame the governor for the next 2 years and the Republicans can creep back into office. The boogeyman can come back out into the dark, where the boogeyman, the only place that the boogeyman can be, in the recesses of the dark. They want to take the CNMI back to the dark ages so that that boogeyman can come back out. Thank you so much for joining me for Kandit News this morning. I appreciate your time. God bless you. Spread this message, spread the love, spread the truth. You all have a wonderful and beautiful day.
I want to thank everyone for coming out today. It was an overwhelming, emotional day. I'm grateful to, of course, Governor Palacios, Lieutenant Governor Apateng, Congressman Kandit Sablan, Mayor RB, and of course the entire leadership of the House of Representatives that came out in support of our candidacy today. Together we are stronger. Everything that Kandit has fought for has been about helping our people, lifting our people up, and especially those who struggle the most. I appreciate the work that he's done. I applaud it, and I hope to be able to follow in his footsteps. For the last 10 years, I have served as a public servant leader. I'm grateful for this opportunity. I also look forward to serving you in Washington, D.C. On behalf of my wife, Daisy, and our children, my committee, and my family, kindly ask for your vote of confidence this coming November as your representative and delegate for Washington, D.C. Undang ko na si Jules Mossy, Giliso. Maraming salamat po. Thank you.
This message is approved and paid for by the committee to elect Edwin K. Probst, Edward Calvo, Treasurer.
One of the major concerns that our people are very interested in is the status of our health care. The costs keep rising. People still have to go outside of Guam for medical treatment and so forth. I think I see in her a brand new type of leadership, one with commitment, with passion, and making sure that the health needs of our people are taken care of. Please vote for Sabrina Salas-Matanami for Senator.
I'm Sabrina Salas-Matanani, and I approve this message.